You know what nobody talks about? The fact that some people can walk away from an entire circle of friends, a relationship, or even their own family and never look back. No guilt. No second guessing. Just gone. And here's the part that confuses everyone. They're not cruel. They're not heartless. In fact, they're often the ones who care the most. So what is actually happening in the brain of someone who can cut people off so cleanly? And more importantly, what does that say about how they're wired? Let me start with something I've noticed over the years. The people who are quickest to judge those who cut others off are usually the ones who've never had to do it themselves. They call it cold. They call it avoidant. They call it running away. But here's what they miss. Walking away isn't always about anger. Sometimes it's about clarity. And the brain that can do that, the brain that can override years of emotional attachment, social conditioning, and shared history isn't broken. It's just built differently. In 2019, researchers at the University of California, Berkeley published a study on what they called relational pruning. They found that people who regularly reassess and end relationships that no longer serve them showed higher activity in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for executive function and long-term decision-making. In other words, these people weren't acting on impulse. They were making calculated, future-oriented choices. The study also found something unexpected. These individuals didn't show reduced empathy. In fact, their emotional processing was just as active as anyone else's. The difference was in how they responded to that emotion. Where most people feel guilt and stay, they felt clarity and left. Now let's talk about what that actually feels like. Imagine you're sitting across from someone you've known for years. You're laughing at the same jokes. You're finishing each other's sentences. But somewhere deep in your nervous system, something is off. You can't explain it to anyone else, because on paper, this person hasn't done anything wrong. But your body knows, and if you're the type of person who listens to that signal, you start to notice the pattern. Not every relationship is meant to last. Not every connection is meant to deepen. And some people are only in your life because you haven't had the courage to admit they don't belong there anymore. Here's where it gets interesting. Most people operate on what psychologists call social inertia. It's the tendency to keep relationships going simply because they already exist. You've invested time, you've shared memories, you've built a story together, and the brain hates wasting investment. This is rooted in something called the sunk cost fallacy, a cognitive bias where we continue a behavior or relationship because we've already put resources into it, even when it no longer benefits us. But people who cut others off, they don't fall for it. They see the sunk cost for what it is, irrelevant to the future, and from my perspective, that's not coldness. Intellectual honesty. There's a specific neurochemical pattern that makes this possible. When you end a relationship, whether it's a friendship, a romantic partner, or even a family member, you're fighting against oxytocin. Oxytocin is the bonding hormone. It's released during touch, conversation, shared experiences. It makes you feel connected. It makes you feel safe. And it makes you want to stay, even when staying hurts you. But here's the thing about people who can walk away. Their oxytocin response is still there. They still feel the bond. They've just learned to override it with something stronger. That something is dopamine, specifically the dopamine hit that comes from autonomy and self-preservation. A 2021 study from Stanford University found that individuals who prioritize autonomy over belonging show heightened dopamine activity in the ventral striatum when they make decisions that align with their internal values, even if those decisions isolate them socially. In simpler terms, their brain rewards them for choosing themselves. Let me tell you what I think happens in that moment. The moment someone decides to cut you off, it's not dramatic. It's not loud, dain't. It's quiet. It's the realization that the version of themselves they become around you is not the version they want to be. And once that realization happens, there's no going back. Because the brain doesn't just store memories, it stores identity. Every relationship you have is tied to a version of yourself. And when that version no longer fits, the brain does something fascinating. It begins to feel physical discomfort in the presence of that person. Your heart rate increases. Your cortisol spikes. Your body is literally telling you this isn't safe anymore. Not because the person is dangerous, but because staying means betraying yourself. Now, I want to address the people watching this who have been cut off. Because I know what you're thinking. But I didn't do anything wrong, and you might be right. But here's what's hard to accept. Sometimes it's not about what you did. It's about what the relationship required them to suppress. There's a concept in psychology called identity foreclosure. It's when someone locks into a version of themselves too early and then spends years trying to maintain it, even when it no longer fits. And the people around them during that time, they become tied to that old identity. So when the person finally breaks free, they have to let go of everyone who knew them that way. Not because those people are bad, but because they're reminders. Here's something else I've come to believe. The people who cut others off aren't avoiding connection. They're protecting it. They've learned that not all relationships are equal, that some people drain you, some people confuse you. Some people keep you small, and the only way to make room for the right people is to remove the wrong ones. This is backed by research from the University of Michigan in 2018, which found that people with smaller, more intentional social circles reported higher life satisfaction and lower anxiety than those with large, loosely connected networks. Quality over quantity isn't just a saying, it's a survival strategy. But let's go deeper, because there's a tribal element to this that most people don't realize. For thousands of years, humans survived in groups. And being exiled from the group meant death. So your brain is hardwired to fear rejection and to avoid rejecting others. It's why ghosting feels so heavy. It's why cutting someone off feels like a betrayal, even when it's the right thing to do. But here's the shift. In the modern world, your survival doesn't depend on the group anymore. You can leave. You can rebuild. You can start over. And people who understand that on a deep level, they're not scared of being alone because they know that being alone is temporary. But being stuck is permanent. I've noticed something about the people who do this. They're not angry. They're not bitter. They're just done. And that doneness is one of the most misunderstood emotional states in human psychology. It's not a snap decision. It's not a tantrum. It's the result of 1,000 small moments where they chose someone else over themselves and finally ran out of the capacity to keep doing it. Psychologists call this emotional depletion. Your empathy, your patience, your willingness to forgive, these aren't infinite resources. And when they run out, the relationship doesn't end with a fight. It ends with silence. So what does all of this mean for you? If you're someone who's been cut off, understand this. It's not always about you. Sometimes people leave because they've outgrown the version of themselves that needed you. And that's not a rejection. That's growth. If you're someone who's done the cutting, I want you to know, you're not cold, you're not broken, you're just wired to prioritize alignment over attachment. And in a world that tells you to stay loyal no matter what, that's not a weakness. It's a superpower, because here's the truth they don't tell you. Not everyone is meant to go with you. Some people are chapters, some are sentences, some are footnotes, and trying to drag a footnote into the next chapter doesn't make you loyal. It makes you stuck. Your brain knows this. It's why you feel lighter after you let go. It's why the guilt fades faster than you thought it would. It's why, 6 months later, you barely remember why you held on so long. Because the brain is wired for survival. And sometimes, survival means walking away. So if you've ever been called cold for cutting someone off, remember this. You're not cold. You're clear. And clarity in a world full of noise is the rarest thing you can have.